today's plan, we're going to take a CFU. It is linked right here. We're in purple where it says Unit 11 CFU. We're going to go there in just a minute. Before we do that, let's just kind of recap everything. I have a test review for you. When you finish your CFU, we will work on that. It's got really good questions. It's got a lot of star-like questions, a lot of multiple choice, which honestly is a lot like your test. So I might kind of talk with y'all a little bit about those and go through some test strategies. You may have Desmos open. Remember that Desmos link is right here. You can have that open for the CFU because I think you'll want to use it. You're also going to be allowed to have Desmos open on the test. So we'll lock everything down so you can only have Desmos open for that. But that can help you as well on questions that you need it. Some questions you may not. You may have a graph and you don't need it. But if you don't have a graph, that's where I would go as far as there. Let's see. What else? I do have all the notes, keys to everything. If y'all didn't finish, all the problems in the notes, you can always go on Canvas and access that there. But just a reminder, really with this test, this is one that you kind of need to study for, and believe it or not, you can study for math, especially on a unit like this, which is really heavy in vocab, because again, that's really all the math we're doing is just identifying, okay? So if I ask you to find, a vertex and you don't know what that is, then that's going to be a problem, because there's really not any way you can just figure it out. You have to know the definition. So let's just remember what these are. What is the shape of a quadratic graph called? Parabola, okay? So just expect to see the word, it might say quadratic, it might say parabola. They're interchangeable. Those are the names of the graph, and they look like pointing up with our smiley faces or pointing down. Okay, all the names for x-intercepts. Roots, zeros, x-intercepts, solutions, okay? So any of those, and again, they will use all of them. You'll see on the review, they're asking the exact same thing. They're asking where the parabola crosses or touches the x-axis. How many of those can there be? Could be two. Could there just be one?
Yeah.
Could there be none?
Yeah.
Yes, there could be none, okay? Most of the time it's two. However, it can be one, it can be none. And you always write those as an ordered pair. Number, comma, 0. Okay? The point that the graph crosses the y-axis. What is that called?
Y-intercept.
That's your y-intercept. It's also known as the initial or the starting value, okay? And then if you remember when we talked about our 3 forms last class, which form showed you your y-intercept? Which form can you just see it real quick? Your standard form. And what value is it? The C value. It's the last number. And that number's not in parentheses, so do you ever change the sign for that? No. Okay? And then also talking about these forms, what's the giveaway that it's in standard form?
No parentheses.
No parentheses. It looks like ax squared plus bx plus c. Yes, all the things. In these, we'll just keep going down the list through here. How do you know if your graph opens up? Without looking at the graph, how would you know? That it opens up like this. Arrows point up. Correct, but how would you know from the equation?
A plus.
The A value is positive.
Oh,
If the A value is negative, it's
I thought you were
opening.
just asking how you know what it's facing.
Yeah, it depends on what that A value is. And remember, that A value is the same in all the forms. No matter what form you're in, if that very front number is positive, you know your graph's opening up. The front number's negative, you know it's opening down. If it's opening up, does it have a max or a min? It's opening down, it has a? Very good. And then what is the vertex point?
The
bottom line. The bottom of the thing.
It's a point, it's not a line, okay? And it's either the lowest point or it's the highest point. So it's either that minimum or that maximum. And it is an ordered pair, so you write it x comma y. Which form tells you your vertex form? Or which one tells you your vertex? Sorry. Vertex form. Okay, and if you remember, again, this is not something you have to have memorized, but this vertex form is on your formula chart. The x value of the vertex is inside by the x. The y value is on the outside. Whenever we come from the parentheses, what do we do with their signs? Change it. Whenever we're not in parentheses, like the K, we keep it. Okay, keep it. Okay, so you can see your vertex there. What other vocab do we have? Oh, AOS. AOS.
The x-intercept of your vertex.
The x value of your vertex. Very close, okay? How do you have to write axis of symmetry?
X equals.
X equals. So on a multiple choice, they're probably going to put answer choices with y equals. And we need to strike them out, okay? But your AOS has to be x equals, and it's always the x value of your vertex. So on these problems that we were doing last class, we put AOS before vertex, but honestly, when I was doing my answer key, I would always find the vertex point first and then go back and write the AOS. Because you kind of need to know both of those. Okay, domain and range. I think this is probably one of the hardest things about this is figuring out the domain and range. And there's going to be like an entire topic on domain and range because it's its own like teak that we have to teach. So some of y'all are starting to catch on that your domain, as long as you just have a parabola, an equation, no story with it, just like here's your graph, it goes on forever. What is your domain going to be pretty much every time? All real numbers, which is the same thing as negative infinity, less than x, less than positive infinity. So if, again, multiple choice wise, they may do this. I think multiple choice wise, most of the time they'll say all real numbers. That's as long as it's not a story. I think we have a question on your review. It's an old star question that we'll do together where it is a story, and so that's not your domain, but it's not very common that we see that. Most of the time your domain is going to be all real numbers. Your range, however, will never be all real numbers. All right, there's always going to be a boundary. Where does that boundary come from? Where does that y value in your boundary come from?
The y-axis of the vertex.
The y value of the vertex. Very good. So if you look at my vertex here, the y value is 5. My boundary is 5. The y value of my vertex is negative 24.5. My boundary is negative 24.5. Okay? You can write it, a lot of you guys write it the first way that I wrote it, which is fine, but I will tell you, multiple choice wise, they normally write it the second way that I did. They either say y is greater than something, greater than or equal to, or y is less than or equal to. And if you're struggling with that, we can work on that on review day. But just know it will always be equal to at that number. It will never be equal to with negative or positive infinity. But then you just decide kind of based how your graph is opening, is it going to go above or below? And that's how you can decide what symbol to use. So here's an example real quick for you. Let's just look at these two. I'm on the second to last page if you want to do this with me. We'll look at the range real quick because I do think this is kind of tricky. We'll do the range for these two graphs. Okay? So here's kind of how I would do the shorthand way. Range is always going to talk about what variable?
Y.
Y. So I would put Y first. Okay? Every single time. Or what's another way that you can write Y?
Initial.
A fancy way. Initial or starting, yes, but without using like words. It's another way that you can write Y. F of X. Very good. Sometimes they'll use f of x, so I want you to know either of those, okay? Those are both talking about outputs. Those are both talking about y's, okay? And then let's look at the first graph. Can you tell me what your boundary is approximately? 85-ish, okay? So I would put 85, okay? And then from there, I need to decide what symbol needs to go. So I actually drew on my graph a boundary. Which way are my arrows pointing from that boundary? Is it going above my boundary line or below?
Below.
So whenever we do anything below, shading with inequalities, graphing here, what symbol would we use for below? Below.
Less than.
Less than. There's an L in the middle. So I'm going to put less than or equal to. And we'll always have an equal to with quadratics. And that's kind of the shorthand way that they could do that. Okay, so if your graph's opening down, it's going to be less than or equal to. What about this one right here? How would we do our range shorthand? What do we start with? Y or f of x. Okay, again, either one. And if you're writing it in, just use y. I just want you to know if it's multiple choice, it may say that. What's our boundary? -2. So leave a little space, put a -2. But this guy is going which way? Above. So what symbol do we use? Greater than or equal to. So since it's opening up, my y values are going above greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So that's how you can do it that way. And I just want to show you this because, again, a lot of times when it's multiple choice, like they tend to do it this way as opposed to the to fill in the blanks because it's just a little bit more simplified, I guess. And then were y'all okay with doing the graph matching that we did here? These last few pages, was that pretty easy? If you have an equation, again, you're just checking like the way it opens, up or down. You're checking like key points. I would always go and look at, look at those attributes. What are my roots? What are my y-intercept? What's my vertex? And Desmos is really good for that, or even your graphing calculator. Using the table is good for that there. So that's kind of all we've been doing the past few days. Little recap of everything. Again, vocab is so important. But I say we go ahead and knock out this CFU. It's on Canvas. And then after that, we'll jump into the review. And I may kind of talk through some of the review problems with you kind of halfway through class. So here's where you're going. Canvas. Go ahead, click on CFU. I would open up Desmos as well. And there's a lot of multiple choice, which is kind of going to be how your test is. So a few things, all right? Flip with me because some of the STAR questions don't have numbers on them. So please stay with me, okay? Close your screens for a second. Okay, so the first topic of the test is just about key features. This is kind of how your test is going to be broken up. Number one, you do have an equation, but you also have a graph. If you have a graph, you don't have to put it in Desmos unless you just want to be able to scroll around on there. But like you could answer this question just from using this picture, okay? Make sure you write vertex as an ordered pair. Roots are also ordered pairs. And then I'm going to be a stickler about axis of symmetry. How do you write axis of symmetry? X equals. And again, if you look at the next question below, that's a STAR question. And what did they put in the answer choice for two of them? They put 2x equals and 2y equals. So what should you do when you see y equals? Cross them out.
Is
Okay.
maximum value the
I'm going to get there. Okay. All right. The second page, number 14, ask you for the y-intercept. I want you guys to write stuff as ordered pairs. I think the STAR, it should be clear. We'll either give you like one answer blank or not, okay? Miles, flip the page. Okay, look at the question right below it. It doesn't have a number by it. We can call it, I don't know, we can call it 15 because it's right under 14. I want to talk about this graph really quick, okay? So remember, I've been saying, if your parabola has a story with it, does this parabola have a story with it? Yeah, what it's talking about. It's modeling the height and feet of a rocket when it's launched from the ground and then when it lands. Okay, let's answer just this question, and then I want to talk about its domain and range. We're going to do a little extra.
So is maximum value the vertex?
The question is asking about the maximum value, and maximum or minimum is always going to be your vertex point, okay? So our vertex point is our highest, and it is an ordered pair, so I'm going to write my vertex right here. What is that ordered pair? Where is that ordered pair? What x value is this about?
It's something 3.4.
I would say it's probably 3 point.
It's like 3.7.
3.75 is probably what I'd say, because I think this is counted by 0.25s. What's the y value?
225.
225. Okay, so that is the actual vertex point. Technically, are you listening? You should probably be writing. When you ask for a maximum or minimum value, they really want just the y value, okay? So if you were to be, like, this is an old STAR question because it says bubble sheet. So the kids would have bubbled 225 because you can't bubble an ordered pair. Now that you can type in, I think they'll be specific. And, like, it will just be, like, an answer blank. But if it does ask for a value, it really just wants the y. I'm mostly going to be asking y'all on my test for like the vertex itself, but
What if
you
we
know,
put the whole
whatever.
thing on the STAR test so we get one?
I don't know. I don't know. It depends on how it asks it. Now, I want to talk about the domain and range of this really quick. All right, so y'all look at that with me. Does this graph have arrows to the left and the right? No, it has endpoints right there. So this is an example where your domain is not going to be all real numbers. It's not going to be negative infinity to positive infinity.
Oh, because it stops.
Because it stops, okay? And we're also talking about, our x is talking about time. Are we ever going to have negative time? No, okay? So for our domain, what would be our starting point? Let's do our setup. We're going to put less than. Domain has what variable?
X.
Less than. And then range, we're going to do the same thing, but what variable are we going to put in there?
Why?
Okay, so we can make boundaries because we have endpoints here. So what is our leftmost boundary? What x value did I just cut through? 0. Now, it has a closed circle. So that means I have to take extra ink and draw a equal to right there. Closed circles, you always put equal to. What about my right boundary?
No,
7.5.
7.5. So I'm put a 7.5 right there with an equal to. Okay? So this would be an example where your domain's not going to be all real numbers. There's a story with it. You just grab your boundaries. It's pretty easy, left or right. Now, for range, again, we don't have arrows, so we're not going to use infinities. What's our bottom boundary? What's the lowest height that you can have? 0, the ground. Look what I just drew through. That's the lowest height we can go, and again, we can equal it because there's closed circles. What's the highest height, Jahan? What's the highest height we can go? 225. That came from our maximum, and we would equal it as well.
C25. Oh, you go
Okay.
to the next line.
You go the highest y. Again, and if you didn't just draw a little picture frame around your parabola, you should do what I did. Draw in your boundaries. It will help you. So there's an example of domain and range when it's got a story with it. It's not all real numbers. It's not crazy complicated. I'm not too worried about that there. Okay, let's see. There was a couple other problems I wanted to talk about. Flip to topic 2. These I don't think are bad. Again, use your multiple choice. Use your elimination. Topic 2 is all about domain and range. This is the topic that I'm going to be honest, I get kind of worried about because this is what I think is the hardest, domain and range. Okay, look at the first one, number 6. Look at number 6. It says, which graph represents a quadratic with a range? Every time you see the word domain or range, I think you should circle which one, and then I think you should write X or Y. So range is what? Y. I'm going to go ahead and write that. Now, this problem, they gave you words. It says the range is all real numbers greater than or equal to 3. How do we write that in an inequality?
Y.
Why? Because it's range.
Y greater than or equal to
Greater than or equal to
3.
3. I would write that down. Okay? So that means if it says greater than or equal to, should our graph open up or down? So we need a graph that opens up. So what can we get rid of? G and F. Okay? And then where does our boundary need to be? Three on the Y, because it's range. Where is H's boundary?
No, it's on the X.
It's
No,
-3.
H's boundary is -3. Where is J's boundary?
positive.
So which one has to be right?
J.
Do y'all see how I kind of just reasoned through that? Zane, I hope you were listening.
You didn't have to do a lot. All you had to do was just check that.
You didn't have to do a lot, but you guys have to know they're going to switch out. If you look at the problems, they're going to switch out domain and range a lot. And so you really got to pay attention. Sometimes they'll do weird things like this where they write that there. Again, here's a story. The next one, I'm not going to answer this with you, but what is the domain? Circle that word. Is domain X or Y?
X.
So what should you mark out immediately?
And a J.
G.
and J.
And, no, G and
J.
H. Anyone that has a Y in the middle.
Oh.
Okay?
My bad. Yeah, but J's still wrong.
And then this says domain. Are there arrows on this graph?
No. Yeah, but J's still wrong.
J is still wrong. You are correct. Because the leftmost x value, again, you're only talking about the x's, so it's 0 to 230. Okay? The other two, 38, you've got a graph. This is a different problem. If you don't have a graph, hint, there's one like this. Actually, I think there's one like this on the CFU. If you don't have a graph, what do you do with this equation? Put it in Desmos. Okay? That will help you. Again, range. Range is what? So get rid of two answer choices. Okay? All right, last topic. This is one that I really want to talk about because we haven't done a lot of questions like this, multiple choice. There was some on the CFU, but here's what, if you come check my answer key, which some of you guys are getting close to being done. If you come check my answer key, I made some notes. I said to either type in y equals or Desmos. You can do that as well. And you're really looking at which one matches based off of points. So every single one of these problems, I made a table of a couple pretty points from my graph. Okay? So you can check it in the table or you can check it in Desmos. But use your answer choices and try to eliminate what you can. How is number 9 opening?
Down.
So what can you get rid of? Why?
Because they're positive.
Because they have positive what? Positive A's. So since this opens down, we need to have a negative A value. That's just the first thing I would notice. Okay? And so that might be able to, again, if you're just going to kind of type in Desmos and you can get rid of two answer choices, that's going to like free up some of your time. Okay? Now, you can't use that up or down trick on number 10, but you can kind of use some of your key features and work backwards from there. Okay? I would grab some points. You've got x-intercepts, you've got y-intercepts. Your vertex doesn't look like a pretty point, but you can check from there, okay? So it's kind of just going back and forth and trying to match the graph. Last one I want to talk about is number 14. And I think this might be the last problem. Is it? Yeah. Look at 14. Everyone, there's a question just like this on last year's STAR. Number 14. Did they give you a graph to look at? No. Okay. Did they give you multiple points? Yes. I would make a table. This is what I would do.
Range is X, right?
No.
Huh?
No.
No.
We're on question 14.
I know.
I want you to get to question 14. I'm not doing this because I like to hear my voice. Doing this for a reason. What are the points that we're looking for on question 14? 2, -6, and 3, -4. Now, what does it say 3, -4 is specifically? The vertex. Okay. So, if you remember, last class, I said, which form can you see your vertex in?
Vertex.
Vertex form. Okay? If you remember where your vertex goes in vertex form, you might be able to figure out this problem a little bit quicker. Do y'all remember where your vertex form goes? This is what vertex form looks like. This is on your formula chart. So where does your vertex go? Anybody remember?
At the top.
H and K.
Okay. Now, H is inside of parentheses. So what do we need to do with the sign of that number? So if our x value of our vertex is a +3, what kind of 3 am I going to write in here?
-3.
The y value of your vertex goes for k. It's not in parentheses, so do you change the sign there? So at the end, I'm going to put,
-3, -4.
and then you have to figure out what number goes in the front, but can you, knowing this,
Yeah.
can you eliminate some of your answer choices?
Eliminate all.
I think you can actually get
Yeah,
the
you
whole
can
thing.
find the answer to be-
So A can't be right. Minus, minus. D can't be right. It's got to be minus, minus. So what does it have to be?
B.
Has to be B. But if you couldn't find it from there, what could you do? You need to put it in Desmos and check the other point. Or, honestly, with tables, I think going to y equals is a little bit easier. Because you can just go to second graph and check the point there. But if you don't remember this, that your x value and your y value are there, then you're kind of just going to have to go through and check each one. But that's why I said like those little things, knowing those 3 forms are going to be helpful there. Okay? So you got the rest of the class to work on this review. I've got an answer key for you to check. Test is next time. You've got to know this vocab. Do not forget everything over the weekend.